What's up, guys, and welcome back to White Wolf Friends English.
Today we're going to have a long listening practice for you about growing up in Southern American culture, not South American culture, Southern America.
So we were both raised in the southern part of America, and it has its own culture. And so we're going to talk today a little bit about what it was like for us.
So what we want you guys to do is take notes according to the video that we turned out earlier this week about how to listen well while taking notes. This is your chance to practice it. So we're going to talk, and it's up to you to figure out if we're going to be comparing, contrasting, whether we are going to be just talking about the same childhood or a different one. Whatever it is, we want you guys to listen, comprehend, write as you're taking notes. Use this as an opportunity to practice. One of the things that we think is important to do for learning a language is being able to listen to longer form conversations or longer listenings. And some of you are really good at listening to podcasts and about an hour-long conversations, but how much of that are you actually actively listening to? So today we're going to give you a 30-minute conversation for you to hear and to practice listening and to gradually step into listening to longer form conversation. But it's difficult to practice active listening for that long. So this is your chance to practice.
At the end of the video, we're actually going to show you our notes of us listening to the conversation after I've already edited the video so that you guys can see what our notes would be on the conversation.
Right. So let's get into it.
So I grew up in more of a suburb lifestyle, but you grew up more in the country, right?
Yeah, countryside. That's where most of my childhood would have been spent.
Right. So even though we were even in the same region and the same state, because we were raised in these different environments, I feel like it caused us to view those environments as different.
Yeah, it was very different. So for me, I think I was more jaded against suburban lifestyle and culture because, I mean, I could go outside and do whatever I wanted. I could be as loud as I wanted. I had horses. Had animals. I could do anything. But for you, I think you were more jaded against the countryside. Yeah. Right? Because it's like, what do you do?
Yeah, like growing up in suburbia, basically, I could go down the street and see my friends. I could play games with my neighbors' kids and
stuff.
You
had internet?
Yeah, there was just access. I could walk down the street to my church. I didn't have to drive 30 minutes to get anywhere.
Was going to town to get drinks with your friends a normal thing? Or
yeah, after school sometimes we would go and we would drive by a drink stop and we would just stop in there to drink because it was $1 to get a drink, so why not?
I see. I didn't have that. For me, it's hanging out with my friends is my friends coming to my family's farm and doing something. We would go climb trees, or we'd go dig holes, or we'd play airsoft, or riding horses. We do all kinds of stuff. We weren't bored by any means, but I think you would think, wow, you guys are so bored.
That's the assumption that I feel like a lot of people make from the city is oh, there's nothing to do in the country. Yeah. I don't think I thought of it that way. Oh, okay. For me, I thought there was a lot of things to do, but not a lot of people to do it with.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yes, but also no, because everybody around you also has nothing to do.
Yeah.
Nothing to do. I say nothing to do. We had chores. We had work that had to be done. We were homeschooled. Other kids went to the countryside school that we had, the rural school district. So, we all had things to do and places to be. But when there was dead time, like in the summer when kids weren't going to school, well, all the kids were equally unable to do much. They couldn't just drive an hour to town every day.
Right. It's kind of like a trapped audience at that point where it's well, we're all kind of here together, so might as well do something. Right. I will say that was one downside of living in the city. It can be just everyone is so busy doing all the things that they have access to that they don't actually spend a whole lot of time with just a few people. Sometimes that happens. Yeah. But most of the times, everybody, I feel is very busy, and it's really hard to really connect with people.
Even in the summertime?
Yeah. Because then, if you're in the summertime, there could be people that are going to camps or doing projects or going to see other people. And so you would think city would be really busy in the summer, but sometimes it's actually kind of like a college campus where it is busy, but then when everybody's gone, everybody's gone.
Yeah, that's true. I see that now. We live in a town right now, so I do see that. there are times when people are just gone or we're really so busy. It's like, I feel like I am surrounded with people, but everyone's busy.
Yeah.
So I don't really see people. Like, I see people all the time, but I don't actually like see people or hang out with people that much in comparison. Now, part of it too is my family schedule. We have young children, so they go to bed early. Whereas if they could stay up later, then we would have probably something else to do. But all young families tend to like be pretty much done by 9 o'clock, 8:30. They get off work and eat and do all the things that have to be done by 6:30, I think.
Yeah. And then like you'd have to have energy to actually go out and do something.
Yes. Yeah, agreed. That to me has been so different about living in a suburban context because I'm not used to, after 4 years in China, I'm still not used to it.
It was really funny because when we moved to China, I mean, that was the biggest cities we've ever lived in is in China. But what was really funny about it was that I remember you getting like really frustrated sometimes because things didn't open until 10 a.m. or sometimes later.
Half of the day is gone by then is what I felt like because I am an early morning person. I am that person that would just love to wake up at 5 in the morning because it's so quiet. There's not much happening. The sun isn't even up yet, but to be able to see the sunrise as I'm getting ready for my day, like, to me, that's just awesome. I love the morning time. Yeah. But apparently no one else does. So in the city, nothing really gets going.
Yeah. No, so because it's that late night culture that you were just talking about, right?
Which by 9 o'clock, I'm done.
So this combines with one of the weirdest things that we've had to deal with in our relationship, which is that my family eats dinner really, really late. And her family eats dinner really, really early. Again, because my family tends to be more late night culture and hers early risers. So when I told her that my family would eat dinner at 8 p.m. sometimes, even later, she was like, I don't know.
I'd be starving by then. Like, that's when I'm thinking about having like a nighttime snack before going to bed. My family would eat dinner around 5 o'clock, but that's about when my dad got home from work, so it just made sense. And then we'd go finish up doing outside stuff. In the summertime, it's cooler in the evening, so you really want to get the last things done. Right. We always did that on a full stomach after dinner. It was shocking to me, and that was something we had to do in our first few months of marriage, is try to get used to that.
Yeah, but when you do have kids, a lot of that is determined for you. It's like they can only last so long without getting super cranky because they are hungry.
So right now we are an early morning house.
Right. Who knows what it will be in the future, but right now we've got to be early morning house because our son will still wake up super early.
Yes. So for suburban culture, knowing now as an adult, looking back at your childhood, now what do you want to see for our kids and their childhood?
For me personally, I do like the countryside culture more.
Really?
Yeah, just because in suburban culture, a lot of it is you can do things with people, but you have fewer responsibilities. While in like countryside living, you have to feed the animals. You have to go here. You have to do this. Like that's just what you have to do. Like you have to go to town to get groceries.
Right.
We never thought about that growing up.
Really?
No.
Like that wasn't a thought?
No,
really?
It was just, oh, do I need a can of corn?
So,
just drive over and get...
You guys would go to the store for like 1 or 2 things?
Yeah.
No, that's not us.
See, but for you guys, one, it's ironically it's strategy, which is interesting.
Is.
But 2, it's teaching responsibilities. There are things that have to be done. Right. Otherwise, things don't eat or things don't get done or whatever. But then on top of that, it's when you're with people, you're with people. I think for me, with those 3 things combined together, like it, honestly, countryside living is better.
Would you say it's more about peopling than suburban living?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely easier to prioritize your family. Like,
oh, yeah, for sure.
For suburban living, it's easy to prioritize like career because you can put a lot of time. This is kind of like more older because we're a little bit older.
Yeah, we're a little older.
Back in the day, if you wanted to have a good job and a good career, then you'd have to be at least close to the major city.
Yeah, you'd try to have your commute time within an hour, hour and a half, which is what my family did. We were out in the countryside. It took us an hour to get to town. My father would have to commute for about 50 minutes to work and then 50 minutes back. And that's actually really normal. I know a lot of people that drive for even an hour and a half. And for some people in the city, like in China, it was riding the subway for at least that long.
Yeah.
Even to go a short distance, but still taking the subway was better
Yeah.
than driving because traffic.
Yeah.
I can get that. But I would say, too, in suburban living, it's easier to be bored enough to want to hang out. Like, you don't have as many responsibilities. So you're saying it, the responsibilities as a pro.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of it as like, yes, but there were so many things that we had to do to just live, to just have our animals live well under our care. There was this never-ending list of things that had to be done, and they had to. There was no, like, we didn't do vacations. If people didn't want to come to us, it was really difficult for us to leave to go do something with people. But, like you said, when the people were there, it was about the people. Like, we made sure things were done enough that we could hang out for the day, and we did things together. So many of my friends learned how to do things with animals that they wouldn't have learned otherwise. I do think, like, not having to mow, like, a field or a hay field or haul hay in the summertime, or not having to take care of 50 horses or something like that in a farm-like lifestyle, it does give us more times to reading books to the kids, or you spend more time, like, cooking a lot more fun meals, like, try crazy things rather than just little things. So there's good things about living in the suburbs too. It also helps to have internet access because we had really bad internet for the whole time I lived at home.
Terrible internet,
and the power would go out a lot. Like, if a limb fell on a branch somewhere on the miles it took to get to the electric company, well, we were just without power until they fixed it. And after a good thunderstorm, it would be sometimes 12 hours, sometimes 3 or 4 days. I do remember just, the power's out. I guess I don't have to do much school. I'll just read some books and do the chores.
So that connectivity is a really big thing. Is saying, like, you not only have access to people in the city, but having a good internet connection means you have access worldwide, which ironically that's become much, much more updated now. So like, you can have that internet connectivity at least
now
in
you
the
can
countryside.
Use fiber optic.
Which
just buried lines in the ground, and that's a lot better.
Which is really, really nice to have that ability to have such access pretty much anywhere. Well, that's so much better than what you had before. The bandwidth of your internet was the worst.
Like, we would call the company sometimes to troubleshoot, and we would say, like, it's 0.2. And they're like, no, that's impossible. It's like, no, it's 0.2. That's our bandwidth right now.
It was ridiculous. Like,
it was very bad. But that lack of internet also meant that me and my brothers didn't have the distraction as much of what was online. So we weren't really current with pop culture. We didn't watch that many movies. We didn't listen to much music. So for us, we were very focused on people when they came over, on each other as a family, and on just playing outside.
Growing up on my side, we did do things. This was back in the day when your parents would shut you out of the house. If they didn't want you to be there, because like my mom would come back from work and then she would be so tired and frustrated for 3 boys, and so she would shut us out of the house and said, go figure it out there. The house is mine. Now I feel like we tend to like shut our kids in the house, but like then it was like, I don't want to see you. She would say, go out of the house. I'm going to shut the door, and I want to see you when it gets dark outside.
So you grew up more like the 80s in that way.
Right. Obviously, it's different now. But even at that time, that freedom, what I assumed was freedom, was very natural to you. Like, if you wanted to go outside and climb a tree, you could just go do that. But for me, it was like, since I was in school for 8+ hours a day and I had other activities and stuff like that, I actually didn't have a whole lot of time to do that. Even though when I came home, I had that block of time, 2-3 hours, that's like nothing compared to all day. Like,
because I was homeschooled, I could also take my school outside and like read my books and do my workbooks and such outside in a tree or sitting on my horse. Like, to me, I loved homeschool for that reason. Like, if I was bored being inside, I could go outside.
Another part of that, though, is also depends on the personality of the kid, right? You flourished in the independence and the freedom, but your brothers, not as much.
Right. My brothers, they did decently well, I think, but they were more interested in doing the things outside. They were more interested in doing, like, mechanic stuff or messing with animals or just playing outside. And the stuff they were doing was actually really cool sometimes because they would build like forts, like, but with actual like wood and nails and hammers, and they learned how to use tools. Like they're really good at working with their hands because of that. However, they were a bear to get into school. They did not do their school as willingly as I did. And for me, it was like, I could work really hard for 2 hours and then have the rest of the day, and I'm not in trouble. Like, I don't make anybody upset. I'm not in trouble. Everybody's happy with me. So that's what I did most of the time. For me, I loved school and I loved reading. So it was easy for me to do.
Yeah. But on the other hand, there's a lot of people that love the social aspect of school. So, and that really reinforces that. Like one of the things for me, I like to do those kinds of activities, those STEM activities and stuff like that. And I feel like done right, STEM activities can be done well in suburban culture and in the countryside. But
that's true.
Depending on who's organizing it and putting it together, it could flop on both of those.
Yeah, it could either turn into something really dangerous.
That's true.
Or it could turn into a fire.
So like in suburbia, like doing a STEM activity like building a model trebuchet, for example.
Yes.
You can do that, but it's always got to be kind of like, don't be too creative or don't go too big because this is a neighborhood. Like we can't build like a 15-foot tall trebuchet.
Well, you could, but you would get in trouble.
There would be no application. There would be no freedom to say, go for it, right? But like in the countryside, you do have that freedom to say, hey, if you want to build like an actual building, like a small building, a small fort or a small treehouse or something like that, just be careful, but yes, you can do it.
Which goes both ways because the hospital was also 45 minutes away.
Exactly.
So for us, it was really nice to have that freedom that we could go run in the woods and stuff, but also we had the natural predators. We had the coyotes and we had the bad snakes. We had good snakes too, but we had a lot of bad snakes. We had a mountain lion around where we were, so we didn't want to be out after dark because we could hear it scream sometimes. Like there were things that are great about living out in the countryside, but you are also in the countryside, which means there are far more animals. Even deer can be dangerous if you happen upon them and you scare them and they feel like they're trapped, they will attack you. So there's a lot of things that we had to be really careful of, and we did have some scary things happen. Being super creative and making a mistake and getting hurt and having to go to the hospital. But it's a 45-minute drive, so it was a very scary 45 minutes each time it happened.
Here's a question. Are there times in a family's life cycle, if you will, that goes through these transitions to say, I live in the suburbs because I have small children and I'm kind of beginning my career, and then after you've developed a little bit and you have maybe a little bit more money, then you move to the countryside.
Yeah,
and then maybe you retire in like a villa or whatever. Maybe a condo would be back into a city, right?
So see, I don't know. This is something I've thought of before. I love history. So when I've studied 20th century history, it seems like just a couple of generations ago, it was more normal for somebody to come from the countryside, save up money, and move to the city because the cities are so expensive. And you have to build your skill set, you've got to build your training, and ideally, if you're going to school and learning a trade and you're doing trips to the city first until you can afford it, and then move to the city, and then it was retire out in the countryside again to be nostalgic and to have the freedom to move about again after spending a few decades in the city. But now it does seem like a dream of small families. Like the cities are just full of small families now. And then the idea is kind of to go back out to the countryside and own the ground underneath your feet. And to be able to have cattle or have a homestead or a farm. Do things without all the rules telling you, no, you can't do that. And so I do think that's a thing, but I don't know if it comes down to having enough money to pay for city life while trying to put together as much as you can in order to buy a cheap piece of land in a cheap place out in the countryside, or if it's more like, I need to finish what I'm doing here in order to go there. Obviously, there's both. It's a very complicated thing. I do know from living in suburbia right now, it is really difficult to pay these bills and save up for a future thing. Like, very little actually goes to any future expenses. It's all about just making as much as you can in order to pay for what you have now. And it's not like we own everything. It's just rent is expensive. The cost of utilities is expensive. Food is expensive.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like before, there was a brain drain, that's what it's called, where you take all the talent from those rural communities and you basically shift it over to the cities, which is why cities exploded, which is why urbanization is a global phenomenon.
Sprawling everywhere.
But interestingly, I think as you go past that, post-urbanization, you do see it kind of creep back outwards. And that's what I kind of mean for a life cycle. Maybe it happens over generations, like of the same family, to say like, our future is in the city to help us build it, and then it's really hard, like you were saying, to go back out of the city. But if you're the next generation, if you grew up in suburbia, you desire that much greater to say.
Your parents will likely help you out.
Right.
If you really want to go out. I mean, technically what's out in the countryside is cheaper to buy.
Right.
Like, you can have a far higher quality of life is really what it comes down to there. Yeah. But some people are convinced that the highest quality of life is in the city where they have all access to the educational programs and the free stuff at the library and all their friends running up and down the street in suburbia.
Right.
But likewise, out in the countryside, they would look at the city life or suburbia and say, what about fresh air? And being able to play for hours and hours, doing your own thing, having your own animals.
Light off fireworks. And
start your own business and stuff. Things that you can afford there because things are cheaper somewhat there. If you have a farm, you're going to have other expenses. But in truth, both have different expenses, whether it's club fees or team baseball fees or whatever, versus just living out there. And they have teams and stuff too in rural communities. I'm not saying they don't. It's just you can do 3 or 4 sports in suburbia because you live near the fields. You live near the coaches and the schools and the meetups. But in the countryside, you're limited to whatever the district does. So if you're really into it, maybe you can, but I mean, you've got to work on the farm too.
One of the solutions I think that people do now is that they kind of make like a suburban lifestyle outside in rural communities.
Right.
Which I think is kind of like a way to kind of reclaim those communities, but it's also kind of weird because
it is.
You have these communities that have been basically abandoned for maybe 100 years, but then now mansions are literally being built around this really, really small community.
And maybe it's not even mansions. Maybe it's just really nice houses.
Yeah.
Like, they can be small, but really nice, too.
Yeah.
So it's just people that saved up and they're able to just go and get that higher quality of life they wanted.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Quality of life is pretty important to Americans. And everybody has a different idea of what that means, which people are different. But there's also this element of time.
Yeah.
And so what we really want is just have this high quality of life and good quality things that don't break all the time, that we have to replace all the time, because it takes time. And we want time to be shared in between, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Time is one of the most important resources that Americans believe in, basically.
Yeah, it's the one thing you can't get back.
And I feel like ultimately those 3 things plus other reasons is why people do things like community development, because that's what it's all about, is to say, why does this rural area explode but this one not so much? And I feel like a big part of it is like, well, that community is being developed, and I think Americans, because we live in a capitalist kind of mindset, we don't want to go to a rural area and build our mansion or whatever, our community, our rural suburban lifestyle out there, because then if like we're the only one that has this like nice house, then it's just kind of like, oh, I guess I went to the wrong place.
It's like nobody can see it kind of a thing.
Right. And then there's like no community that you hoped would be out there. So I think that's why cities are so popular, is because there's development that's happening. That's
and there's jobs too.
Right.
Like your jobs are closer. So the idea is you'll have more time if your commute is 5 minutes as opposed to an hour with your family. Another thing that affects all of that, though, is that people can work remotely now. And fiber optic is far more accessible and more affordable.
Right.
And then we've got 5G, and 4G is stronger than ever. So, I mean, you can do things out in the countryside now. You can live without the commute.
Yeah.
You can live and spend time with your family, and you can build and live in a more cheap place out in the countryside. It's possible.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Because of the connectivity and because of COVID, I feel like that's really shifted things where people can actually have that city kind of lifestyle of the activities and the things and the even peopling in an online setting, and like open the floodgates for remote work and living more in the countryside. This is my prediction. In 20 years from now, people will be looking backwards and seeing this flood out of a city from COVID, not necessarily because of the fear of getting COVID, but the tools that allow people to still do their work as a programmer or as a therapist or whatever outside of the country just as well as if they were working in the city.
Right. Which I think is actually going to make us more lonely overall, right?
Yeah, because, I would think so.
I mean, you're not seeing people face to face. We need this face to face interaction. I think people are made to need that.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that, I mean, it would be tough, I think. Imagine trying to live like as a single person out there. And some people can do that really well. Some people can. But I do think as far as introverts and extroverts go, even introverts don't want to be alone all the time.
Right.
For the most part.
But because of that, I think you're also going to see a lot more people growing to desire to have some sort of connection online, whether that's in social media platforms or whatever, to have something online to be able to do things to people.
Right. I think that's why there's been such growth in that industry. It's just communications and social media online. I
feel like the debate between whether it's better to live in the country or in the city, I think it all kind of comes backwards on the real motivation on why they're doing what they're doing. Like it's a really macro question, but like for my family, it was all based around one thing, which was education.
Yeah.
The reason my mom moved to suburbia was not necessarily because she thought it was a better quality of life or better internet connectivity or her job. She didn't really care. All she cared was that her children had a very good education system. She didn't want to live out in the rural communities, which sometimes don't have the best education. And so she found a really good school and she said, I'm going to do whatever it takes to live in that community. And actually the most affordable option wasn't in the countryside because she couldn't find a job there. It was in suburbia.
Right. And for my family, they solved the education problem by homeschooling us. So it worked out really well that way. And we were able to do a lot of hands-on learning because the job my dad had. My mom was able to teach us how to start businesses and run them. She was able to teach us how to work horses. And we learned on the farm with both of my parents. So, I mean, it was something that we had a lot of opportunities, but my dad had a good job and we were able to afford the farm in the first place, but we were also able to just live and we were able to learn together and help each other and help those in our community. Yeah. It's a different lifestyle in both ways, and you can certainly do both really well. Really, it comes down to personal preferences, obviously, because everybody's different.
Yeah. Well, personal preferences plus also some of the physical needs or the environmental aspects that kind of force that to happen. To say, like, if I'm older and I can't always take care of myself, I'm going to need to have people close to me, which might mean that I need to go live in a city close to my kids or something like that.
Right, exactly. That's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We did a lot in that conversation. There's so much. So we're excited to do the notes on this one and show it to you guys right here. So compare your notes and see how you did. Your notes do not have to exactly match the notes that we have taken. One, because we were the ones conversing, so of course, we're also native English speakers, so we can catch the nuances being caught here. However, it is important that you have noted these keywords, that you're hearing these in context. And if you didn't hear these or if your notes look different, try to watch the video again. In the settings tab on YouTube videos, you can alter the speed, slow it down a little bit if you need to, slow it way down if you need to. That's okay. The idea is that you are going to be listening and taking notes, listening for those keywords, hearing them in context. And if you have to slow it way down, it's okay. Don't worry about that, because the more you practice, the faster you'll be able to go over time.
Right.
What it is that you need to do is to have consistent practice, listening and taking notes.
Yeah. Some of the best English speakers that we've ever met, the most natural, fluent speakers, started with watching a movie 4, 5, 10 times.
Yes.
And over time, they get more, they hear more, they get faster, they get better. And that's what practice is. And that's what this video is about, for you guys to be able to practice those listening skills that we talked about in our last video, and to be able to do that well over a long time because it's like an endurance muscle. We're excited that we can be a part of that we can help you guys be able to strengthen those listening skills daily, regularly.
So guys, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you like this type of video. Hit that like button and comment below. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in a rural area, suburban area, or a city area? And where do you prefer to live? What is your preference? All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.